All right, guys, I just want to say thank you for coming back to the Springfield School Board Election Series. Today, we have Kelly Byrne, who's going to be talking with us, telling us about himself, what he's doing and why he's chosen to run for the board, and a little bit of background about his perspective. Also, Kelly, just want to let you know that, we're going to go through the same questions that I ask every other individual who's running for this candidacy. And then also that I'm not advocating for any specific person, so it's equal opportunity. We just want to get the information out to mostly here on this show, the minority part of our area, so that they are knowledgeable about the vote and get to know you a little bit more. Every question that I'm going to ask you has been asked to everyone. All right, so with that being said, thank you for coming on, to talk to United Community Change. I think it's a pleasure, to meet you and get to know what you stand for. Tell me about yourself and how long you've been here.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So I'm 37 years old. I grew up in Springfield. I graduated from Kickapoo High School. If anyone's old enough to remember, I was on the 2003 state championship basketball team for Kickapoo. I always like to refer to myself as the the fifth member of the Fab Four, which there's four other guys on my team that year that made All-State, and then I was academic All-State. It was quite a year, and I maintained most of that friendships to date. Several of my best friends in the world, including my business partner to date, are from that team. I've got two kids in the district, a fourth grader and a first grader. And I'm a businessman. I do real estate investments and real estate development. I've been doing that for 13 years. So I went off to college to play basketball at St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. When I was finished, I moved back here to start my business and start my family. Did you want me to get into why I'm running? Was that part of the question too?
That's my next question. Yeah, what has you running? I really wanted, to just expand, who are you? You talked about that, and what has you running, and then a little bit about your family, and what brought you to this community.
Well, we moved to the community in 1990. One of my dad's job brought me here when I was younger, and then college took me to. So basketball kind of took me around a little bit. So basketball took me, as I mentioned before, since I was the fifth man on a very good team, I didn't quite get as many scholarship looks as I maybe could have.
Right.
So I went to. My first year I played at a junior college outside of St. Louis in Belleville, Illinois. And then my second year I played in Kansas City, Kansas Community College in Kansas City, Kansas. And then I spent 3 years after that at St. Cloud State University up in Minnesota, and then moved back here. So that's my journey everywhere that I've lived. So,
you were bouncing around.
A little bit. I mean, it gave me it was good life perspective and meeting some different people and having different teammates and different roommates. And
yeah,
I mean, roommates from, out in little small towns, and roommates from inner city Memphis, that lived completely different lives than the way I grew up,
Right.
And let's see. So after all that, I decided to start my business here in Springfield. And
what got you into real estate?
Yeah, good story. So in college, my mom gave me a book to read called, oh my gosh, I have a copy of it here somewhere. It's escaping me. Robert Kiyosaki's book.
Robert Kiyosaki. Okay, yeah. Think and Grow Rich.
Yes, thank you. And
I'm a realtor, by the way.
Good. So I read that book in college, and I thought, I'm in business school, but I don't think I really want to go the corporate route.
Yeah.
I want to work for myself and create things. And I saw real estate as a really good avenue to do that. So rather than go get a corporate job like most of my classmates and roommates did with their business degrees, I turned that down and came back here to work for a developer who didn't pay me much at all. That wasn't the reason I worked for him. So I would also
you were an apprentice. It's okay.
so I would also serve tables at night while I was working for him, and just to learn. And that was kind of the arrangement I had with him. And to this date, he's still, I would consider a mentor, but he's also a partner now. I actually do development deals with the guy who first taught me real estate. So I spent about a year learning from him, and then my partner, who became my partner, my good friend Anthony Tolliver from high school basketball. He went on to play at Creighton and then started a professional career. And he had just started to make some money, so he was interested in investing in real estate. So we just did our first deal together. So I was working for the developer, flipping a house, which meant I was in there painting and ripping out carpet and doing that, and then also serving tables at night. Also kind of just learn the business, right? I remember serving tables. The worst part was always, a lot of people that I graduated high school with coming in with because I served tables 2 miles from the high school I went to, coming in, and they had started corporate jobs or whatever it was, and I'm serving them.
They're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
What happened to you? I remember you were, you had a 4.7 GPA. What happened to you? And so
did you tell them that you had a goal set that you were working on? It's work in progress.
You tell someone I'm working on big things, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna like, that doesn't, whatever. So you just swallow your pride and do it. So yeah, all of that was really good learning experience in terms of just work ethic, and all of that. I knew was my goal was I'll work my butt off and be broke at least until I'm 30, because I didn't have any, I paid for my school with basketball, so I didn't have any college debt. That really helped me be able to take that entrepreneurial path. Had I graduated college and had to start paying for student debt, like most people do, that would have been that would have been a problem, which is why I'm a big advocate for teaching younger people that taking on a bunch of debt may not be the best way to go, right?
You
really can limit yourself the rest of your life by doing that. So we just started. So Anthony and I started flipping houses one at a time, and then we worked that. We after reading Think and Grow Rich, that was never always the plan, but you got to start somewhere. So we started picking up rental properties and built up a single family rental portfolio.
And how old were you when you did that?
We did my first flip house when I was probably 22.
Amazing.
Well, I was fortunate to have a partner who was making money at an early age and was willing to invest in me. But so there's some fortune of circumstance there for sure. But I also had spent my entire life, without knowing it, proving to him that I was someone that he could trust to invest money in, right? So there was, it's kind of life will give you opportunities sometime, but you have to be prepared to
accept it,
take those opportunities, and
you
always have to be preparing and presenting yourself and to others in ways, because you don't know when the better you present yourself, the more those opportunities can come to you also. And the more you learn, and if you treat life as every single thing as a learning experience, even the failures, like if we flip a house and lose money on it, then I don't see that as a failure.
It's a learning opportunity.
What not to do, right? And do something different. So we built up a single family rental portfolio. And then I believe 2013, we did our first development deal. And that was a deal that I found that was like a house near Missouri State campus that was already zoned for multifamily use. And it was really torn down, old house. And it was priced to where no one really wanted to buy it and fix up the house, but it was too expensive for the land. So we ended up making a low offer on it and got it. And I was like, okay, what now? I don't know how to develop, but I'll learn, right? So I went back to my mentor and said, hey, I'll partner with you on this. Teach me the ropes, And he said, very nice of him. He's like, well, I don't want to partner with you, but I'll help you out. And I said, well, I'll split the development fee with you and I'll give you half of that. And he's like, okay. I don't want to do anything for free. I want your help.
Yeah.
So we did that deal, and then I brought Anthony in on that deal, and this was early in his career, and it's just funny the way things work. Anthony was with the Golden State Warriors at that time. It was his first deal that he got the rest of the season with a team, like his first. I guess that's not true. Maybe his second year, and I think that was Stephen Curry's rookie year, maybe his second year, and they got to know each other really well. I don't know if you know who Anthony Tolliver is, but he's just like the absolute best human I know. I mean, this guy doesn't hardly drink alcohol. He certainly doesn't smoke. He doesn't cuss. It's kind of funny when he gets riled up and you hear him start saying freaking, gosh dang it. And so Stephen was raised in a really Christian household, and those two just really connected and kind of developed a lifelong friendship. Well, Stephen Curry ended up investing in that little real estate deal here in Springfield, Missouri. So our first development deal, I'm learning from the developer who's teaching me, and I'm bringing in Anthony and then Stephen for the money, and we're doing the first deal. And it went, and that was in 2013, I believe. Years go by, we built it, filled it up, great investment, sold it. By then, Stephen Curry's career just took off. So
exploded.
I think when we sent him the check after we sold that property, it just sat on his counter for like 6 months, and we had to like reissue him another one because it wasn't wasn't much for him.
It was pennies.
Yeah, but
your check didn't matter anymore.
Thing in the world, we gave him like a 55% return on investment, but it's just
wow.
Not less than a game check probably for him. So from that point on, we started doing more student housing development, and it's kind of like as you go, we just always had the idea of learning and growing and reinvesting. So we just kept growing and growing. Got into senior housing development, and now we do some industrial investments as well. So it's just been a 13-year career of just basically starting from right out of college with nothing, and then trying to find ways to creatively put deals together, and then trying to piggyback off of those deals to do bigger deals and more deals, and just keep doing more.
Do you feel like even though you ditched college, for the real estate pathway, did you use some of that? Did some of it kind of help you on your way?
Well, I didn't ditch college. I did graduate.
Okay, you did graduate. Congratulations.
Definitely, that's important as I'm running for school board. I do have a college degree. But for me, I mean, it's not what I end up doing in my life. It's certainly not all about the education. The education was valuable, and particularly during that, 4 years of college and playing basketball during that time, and just kind of learning how to be a self-sufficient man. There's a lot of value there as well. And there was certainly a lot of value in having a business degree that was translatable to what I do. But cool. So much more is learned by just
doing it,
going into the world and not being scared to step out there and do something new, and treating everything as an educational experience, and every interaction you have with someone as a potential where you treat everyone with respect, and you don't know what's going to come of that interaction,
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you for giving me a little bit of history about you and your journey. I appreciate that. Actually, I really do, because I'm in love with real estate. I'm a realtor now, but my story, we won't get into my story, but I've had my license for quite some time. But it's funny that you talk about like back then, like in 2013, I think I was in maybe middle school. Yeah. And that's when I fell in love with real estate and accounting, and I, still teeters harding which one I wanted to do. But I remember when I got into high school, and I'll just share this because it's kind of funny. I decided I wanted to start wholesaling homes because I saw, and it was right, like I saw this ad that was saying that multifamily investment were going to be the big thing. And I kick
Yeah.
myself right now because I was young back then and I was paying attention, but I didn't have enough knowledge to like really, or the network per se, to really like be guided to like actually do it. But I'll tell you this, I was going, so I decided I had this little program and I watched it, I read it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then so I go to these little multifamily homes that were for sale back then, and I started telling people like, I want to buy this. And they're like, and they're looking at me like, do you have a job? Like, I was like, well, no. But the program told me I didn't have to have a job. Like I had no network at all. And I think what they called it was like bird dogging. So
Yeah.
like where you like find the investment,
Yep.
try to connect the people and stuff. And I was trying to do it. And I ran into one of these realtors and she was just like, do you have a license? I was just like, what's the license? But I was maybe like 15, 16 years old.
Wow.
But but it was something. And I would go back to my I actually almost made something happen with one of those deals, but it was a deal out of St. Louis. And I found a really good property. It was a really good investment. I got some individuals together, like links. I did my part of what I thought I was supposed to do back then, but obviously they knew that I was like not educated. So they basically just was like, there's no contract with her. She don't know what the heck she's doing. Like kicked me out of the deal. Like, and I was
That
just
really
like,
stinks. I mean, you learn. I've done these types of deals before, as doing real estate. There's just like a lot of different ways to do real estate.
yeah, so many ways.
And you kind of start forming this tool belt of different things that you can do. So I've had opportunities over the years to do, wholesaling deals if I find something that maybe doesn't suit me, but then I built up a network of people over the years of doing business with them and know, well, maybe this would be a good deal for that person. And you learn how to set those deals up so that doesn't happen. But at the same time, that shouldn't happen. And I've kind of treated things like you were in a situation, sounds like you were really young, and making the money on that deal would have been a lot.
It would have been a life-changing situation. I've had so many life-changing situations, and a lot of different things affected the reason why I couldn't be my great self, but at that time, when we focused on that situation there, I was really young. And so it was easy to just kind of judge that and be like, yeah, we don't see how she was able to do this or pull this off, but it's easy to like just leave her out of it because, what I'm saying? Because like we're more experienced, we know the contract. She doesn't know what's going on really. That's really how they done that. It was very unethical for them to have done that. However, I learned from it,
That's good. So I've had experiences like that too, where people, I wasn't a 16-year-old with that money.
I way ahead of my time. I was
younger, and every dollar made a big deal to me. I had people treat me in that way too, and it certainly doesn't do any good to sit around and worry about it. And if there's nothing you can do about it, but you can learn from it and make sure the next time that you put a deal together that you've got your contracts lined up, and then that.
Yeah. Just have it, another thing was just
learn that mistake at age 16. I mean, you learn that mistake at age 35 and you've got whatever, mortgage, kids, like you can be in a different place. But if you learn those type of mistakes earlier, when you have sort of more
time on your hands
in life, you don't have a whole lot of responsibilities, then
the risk is less huge that you're taking. So let's get to this, let's get to the questionnaire, and the questions I want to ask you, in order to give more knowledge to the community about your candidacy on the school board. That first question we already, kind of reviewed or talked about, why are you running for the Board of Education? And if elected, what will be your priorities?
So why I'm running, I mentioned I have 2 kids in the district, and I'm not running because there's something specific with them, really that worries me. But it does, having 2 kids in the district and having graduated from the district and just having watched and paid attention over the last, at least decade, and noticing some things that I feel like, where some areas where the district is failing our students in the district, um, led me to look into running. And when I looked into running and saw that, so I ran last year, and when I looked into it, originally the board historically had been made up of a lot of professors. We're fortunate in Springfield to have Missouri State and Drury and other universities around here. But there had been an imbalance on the board where that was the primary makeup of the board. And you might think, well, yeah, it would make sense to have a professor overseeing a board of education. But the role of the board is to oversee the superintendent, and to approve the budgets. And this is the largest district in the state. It's a $320 million budget. One of the largest employers in town. That entity is, there's a lot of moving parts there, and proper oversight of that board is really relatable to what people do in the business world, which is you're not in the classroom. You're not specializing in any one thing, but you have the tools necessary to process information from the different professionals and put those people in roles where they can succeed. All of this for a common goal. So to me, I thought there just is not enough representation from the business community. We have a strong business community in Springfield. There's not enough representation from those leaders in the business community on our board of education. It was primarily professors and then some attorneys. So I thought, well, if no one's going to do it, I'll do it. So I started this process last year. I came up just short. I was 350 votes short, needed 8,200 or something like that. So it was very close, and it was a very competitive race. So after a lot of thought, I decided to do it again. In the meantime, because I'm not an educator, I signed up to do some substitute teaching.
Yeah.
I had heard there was a shortage of substitute teachers. And I thought, again, well, I can do that. That seems honestly kind of fulfilling. That seems interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a good way for me to learn what the teachers deal with and what the students deal with in a real, tangible, direct with people sort of way. And that was a fantastic opportunity. I tried to bounce around town to get a different perspective, to not just stay in one school where the makeup of the students might be one particular way.
Right. What schools did you attend?
I've done Pershing, Carver, and Reed.
Okay. Cool.
And I wanted to do a lot more, but obviously I own a business and
yeah, you're limited with time.
In the meantime, we had Christmas break and then positive COVID tests where I couldn't do it for 10 days. And
there's a lot going on.
And then we shut down school for a week, and then spring break, and now we're right in the thick of the election. So here I am. So I wish I could have done a little bit more, but that was still, 20
some hands-on
in the classroom of really seeing what it's like. And it's so much different than when I was in school and I graduated in 2003. It's so much different. And when did you graduate?
I graduated 2007.
And
so I'm 32. And yeah, I graduated in Parkview 2007.
Okay.
Parkview High School. Middle school, I went to Pipkin and Westport.
Okay.
And then I started at Westport. I went to Westport Elementary, and then I went to Pipkin and not Westport, Studi Middle School.
So these schools are like, if you went into a substitute teacher position in any one of those schools today, you'd be like, whoa, this is a lot different. And so that experience alone was really helpful, just to see how things are done differently. Just an example of like what was a really fruitful experience was when I was doing sixth grade science at Carver, and there were two different students that day out of about 80 that essentially expressed to me, like they were supposed to do their assignment. They called me over to ask for help, and they were just pointing at the first question and saying, "Number one, I don't understand." And I'm saying, "What do you not understand?" They're just saying number one. And I'm like, "Well, what part? How can I help you?" "Just number one." They kept saying.
Yeah.
I realized they could not read the question. This was just a sentence at sixth grade. And there's just two different students in one class that brought this to my attention. And another thing that's really eye-opening students is the distraction levels. Most of the students are not trying to do their work, right?
Any work.
If there's 25 kids in the class, I mean, you're having a hard time picking out the maybe 2 or 3 that are actively like trying to do the assignment, or like, the teacher asked me to do this. I want to do it. I want to get a good grade.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask questions.
Overachieving students.
Those, just not even that, just students that are there trying to learn,
Yeah.
And this is sixth grade. It's an age where kids are distracted.
Yeah.
But so this was just the 2 kids that told me this out of 80 that I saw, and there were dozens of kids that day. The majority of the kids were not trying to do their assignment, so it'd be easy to hide. So I believe there was a lot more kids that, rather than go through the shame of ask me, I could say I can't read, can you help me? They just push the assignment away and don't do it.
Yeah, they just
or just fake it. They just go through and just write a bunch of answers, right? So I just share that with you to expand on my experience as substitute teacher, and just how I think it's it was very insightful to me to see how, in a very real, tangible way, that there are kids in our district. There are a lot of students. There's 24,000 students in our district, and in so many ways, our generation is letting them down on a quality education, because our scores, our state assessment scores, have been dropping. Our ACT scores have been dropping for 6 years straight, just steady decline every year for 6 straight years. Our MAP scores have been dropping for around 10 years. And we're at a point now where only 35% of our grade school kids are performing at or above grade level in math.
Oh my. And tell me, and just because, since you're putting this data out, and I just kind of want people to realize, like, where are we literally? Where, before we started having a decline, where was the education level for our area statewide? Do you know?
You can find that data through DESE's website, dese.gov maybe, or .org. I'm not sure, but look up
DESE, okay,
Missouri, and you can, they have all the data throughout the history of the district, right?
Okay.
I do know this was published in the news leader just as maybe yesterday, even real soon.
Okay.
Last few days, the information about the decline in ACT scores and how it was. So to paint a picture for this, it was somewhere around, the average test score was like 22.5. And then in 2015, the state started mandating that all seniors take the ACT, because it used to be by choice.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about what that means is, well, the ones that were going to graduate and go to college would take it, and then the ones that wouldn't bother taking it, right? So
yeah,
the ones that would score below average just wouldn't take the test, so that would keep your numbers a little bit higher. That was historical for years.
Yeah.
So for 20 years, but even then, for about 20 years, so since I was in high school, since like 2000, those ACT scores basically remained flat. They just kind of just like a little ripple, just went back and forth, just really flat around 22.5 or something.
So what I think that you're saying is that the real score was kind of hidden because some students weren't taking the test.
No. So let me. Okay, so for 20 years, scores remained flat around 22.5. Okay. And then in 2015, all students start taking it. So it takes 1 month. Okay.
Okay.
But what you would expect that in that 1 year, because now more students are taking it.
Yeah.
What you would expect from there is drop and then remain flat again, right?
Yeah.
It had that big drop and then just continued to drop
To
every.
drop.
So I'm not blaming that first big drop on any sort of lack of performance. That's clear. I mean, it's so obvious. It was so out of the norm. It went from 20 and a half or something in 1 year. That is because of the change in every student now being required to take it. But what's is true and is accurate and is alarming is every year since then. So 2016 until current, it's either been flat or down. It's just been a steady downward drop.
Yeah.
And that can't be explained away. And in terms of the MAP test scores, the state assessment scores, we have been dropping consistently each year on average against our own scores from the prior year, but also against the state average. So we're losing ground to the state. And some people might look at the data and say, well, COVID affected everybody. We lost a lot of learning time. Well, COVID affected the entire state, but we also dropped compared to the state. So the entire state dropped, but we dropped compared to the state, right? So that data is obvious, it's there. I think every candidate has acknowledged this to some degree, but that there are ways that we do need to improve, but there are some candidates that have pointed more to this as a failing and some that have kind of, made excuses for it. So these are the reasons that I decided to run, was because seeing this steady decline and so I'll probably answer some of your other questions. So I'm going too long-winded on one question, but
it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Well, I get it. So this is why.
This is why I decided to run.
This is why you decided to run. So you're a parent. The scores are going down. You went into school. You see visually that how students are struggling. Even while you're trying to assist them, you see that they're struggling. And so that kind of put the fire under you that either somebody has to do something about this or I'm going to do it myself.
Great summary of what I spent 15 minutes rambling on about. Thank you.
Not a problem. That's why I'm here. I'm here for you. Okay. So what differentiates you from the other candidates or board members?
So for starters, I believe I'm the only candidate who can say they both graduated from the district and has their kids currently in the district. I'm the only one who's done the substitute teaching, been in the classrooms recently. I believe my business experience sets me apart. We've got one other businessman, Steve McCoskey, who does compliance for Rapid Roberts. We've got let's see.
Chad Courtney.
Chad Courtney is a family law attorney. Charles Taylor is a career educator, professor at Drury his whole career. And Brandy Van Antwerp has done a few different things. She's mostly in sort of a nonprofit role. She runs a nonprofit. Connect. And prior to that, I think she was with Mercy or Cox in a grant administrator role. So as we spent a lot of time talking earlier in this, what a real estate developer does is really good experience for what is required of a board member. It's not being an expert at any one thing. It's bringing together all the experts with a common goal. It's dealing with the architect, the engineer, carpenter, the landscaping, the framers, like whoever it all is, all these different pieces. And you start with your vision, and then you're working with all of these different experts to drive your vision to the end. And that is what real estate development is. And as part of that process, it's obviously heavy part of it is budgeting. And one of the biggest roles of a board member is oversight and approval of the budget.
Yeah.
So for all these reasons, I think that I am the most qualified candidate.
Thank you for that. Let's talk about the campaign. Have you received any donations or endorsements from any groups in the community, outside the community? If so, which groups?
No, and thank you for asking that, because I think that's an important detail. There's a few major groups that that get involved in the school board race, and then there's a whole lot of groups that just won't touch it. So you've got historically what has happened is it's really hard, because this is a thankless job and you don't make any money and it's a lot of work. So historically you don't have a lot of good candidates emerging, and sometimes these races will go uncontested. It's not until the last few years really that they've gotten very competitive. So what's been happening is you have a few groups who have been able to really select who these board members are. So I think last year we had about a 10% turnout in this election, as compared to 75% in the November election, which that presidential election. School board is the next April, and then 10% of people show up. So people don't go vote. And so this is the largest district in the state, and you need a lot of votes to get on that board. You need more votes to be a school board member than you need to be mayor, than you need to be a city council member, than you need to be a state representative. So, and often school board races are poorly funded. It's just not something that historically people have raised a lot of money for. So for all of those reasons, the two main groups who affect the races have had a huge impact on it, because those two groups have a good network that they can control and get the word out and show those people up to vote. That's the NEA. The NEA is the National Educators Association. That is the teachers union. And then the other group is the Chamber of Commerce. So these two groups historically endorse candidates, and their record for endorsing winners is like nearly flawless. Usually they're able to basically hand pick and put those people into place, right? It's a little concerning to me that the NEA part of it is especially concerning to me, because the board negotiates the contract with the teachers union. And if the teachers union every year is picking the board members, then they're picking the people that they're sitting across the table from in negotiations. That, from the voters' perspective, from the parents' perspective, from anyone who wants a completely open and unbiased, if they want representatives representing the voters on that board, because that's what it's for. That board is the representation. It's the authority of the voters, 7 of them, that they get to say, okay, we're putting you into place to oversee the district. Well, I see it as a little bit of conflict if the NEA keeps picking the ones that they're going to end up negotiating the union contract with. And then there's the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce, they have their own PAC, and a lot of what they do is they get involved in the school board elections and the city council elections, and they endorse candidates. And if those candidates win, that gives them some level of access to those, city council members or school board members, right? You can see, so that's like, think of it like local crony capitalism, right? Like in Washington, D.C., large groups might want to put people into seats so that they could lobby with them and get the decisions that they want, right? Well, the chamber likes to have people on the board that they know that they can work with, so that they can promote business, what they deem as proper business things in the community, right? That gives them some level of control. And it's the same thing with the school board. So historically, the other candidates who don't get those endorsements, they don't usually have enough money to overcome that, to get their word out, because the only way you can get your message out is by advertising, right? You got to get 10,000 votes. How are you going to get that? You don't have a vote, or you don't have these major endorsements. So this year has been a little bit different. In our most recent reporting, I reported the most funds raised of any of the candidates. Not one group donated to me. These are all individuals. I do not have the endorsement of the NEA, and I'd be happy to go into detail as to why I think that is, or you can ask them. I do not have the endorsement of the chamber, so I'm not beholden to any group. And I've raised a record amount of money, and that's not what's important about that is these are just people, individuals, most of them grandparents, parents, and just general voters in the Springfield community who are just concerned with the district, because that's what I've been explaining from the start. That's my campaign is, look, there's problems with the district. It's time we turn this around. It's time we focus on academics. Our academics have been slipping. We need to turn that around. And it's people that agree with that who have been basically writing personal checks. Most of these $50, $100. It's over 150 something people that have donated to my campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that people are realizing, whoa, school board matters. We've been staying at home.
Yeah.
We'll vote. School board has a huge impact on my life and my child's life. And
absolutely,
we're not going to sit by and let the large groups dictate it. We're going to show up and vote this time.
Right. Well, absolutely. Well, that's why we have this series right now, to get that education out there so that they can participate and be more involved. And so to answer out this question, no, you don't have any endorsements from any large groups, but you do have support from some community members and those who have donated to your campaign that have allowed you to put out the marketing pieces that you have done to get where you are now. Which is huge, which is a huge accomplishment. How many people were running? That was, I think, how many people were running for this office?
5.
Okay, and we're down. It didn't start with 5, did it?
This year?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were 6 or 7 announced they would run, but 2 dropped out pretty quick and never completed the process. Since you had to turn in petitions, which is when the ballot gets formed, there's been 5.
Okay, so 5. All right. So let's talk about governance. And everyone has been asked these questions. You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. So, if you want to have a short answer, that's fine. But what is the school board member's role and responsibility, and how does that role differ from the role of the superintendent or administration?
Superintendent oversees the day-to-day business. They're the CEO, if you will, of the school district.
And that means CEO meaning what? Like, what does that mean?
The top dog. Everything funnels up to them, and the buck stops with them.
Okay.
Right? They are putting everyone beneath them into place to do their roles, to funnel up to them, and for them to make all the top line decisions. But it all rises back to them. And if something goes wrong, they need to fix it, right?
Okay.
The role of the board is, since tax dollars go to the public school system, right? Something like 80 or 90% of your property tax bill will go to Springfield Public Schools. The board is the public's opportunity to oversee the district, and they do that by citing the board's role as specifically being oversight, basically hire and fire the superintendent, and then along the way help determine strategy and set goals and hold that superintendent accountable to those goals and approve budgets along the way. So this is the public's opportunity to vote for 7 different members who will have 1/7 authority each over the entire school district.
Okay, great. And so therefore, the role of the board is to balance the power that the superintendent has over the whole district.
Yes, it's to give the public a say in the oversight of the school board. It's not to necessarily manage. It's not to get involved. A school board member would never deal with an employee other than the superintendent. Like, they would never hire or fire, or generally not try not to even deal with those employees. To go around.
That's all on the superintendent to
so it's just the balance to provide the way they give the voters the oversight of the district is to say, okay, well, we'll give you these 7, and your job is to hire and fire the superintendent. So you hire her, say her, because that's who we have now. And then she knows that she could be fired by the board and the board alone. So she must work with the board to set goals and meet those goals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for explaining that. What is the best way to address differences of opinion on the board or between the board and the administration?
Well, between the board and the administration, it's through a vote of the board. I mean, ultimately, if there's a differing opinion and the board wants to take up a vote, they can do so on really anything they want to. That wouldn't be proper on most things. You don't want to undermine your superintendent's authority, right? That's just really the relationship. So you want to trust her to do her job. But if something ever got out of hand, the board could vote on just about anything they wanted to.
Right.
But that's just not really how it works. What was the other part of that question?
The first part of the question was, what's the best way to address the differences of opinion on the board?
Yeah. Cordially, hopefully. There will be differing opinions, which I think is good. So more historically, during this kind of slide up until the last year, so during this sort of slide in performance I talked about, most votes seem to go just 7-0. Just the board just kind of filled a seat and they said, we'll just, let the superintendent take it and we'll just kind of be public liaison, public cheerleader for the direction the superintendent wants to go. And we all want to show board unity and we'll just vote 7-0 on everything. This last year, we've had a little bit more split votes and a little bit more debate. Debate is good. Split votes can be good. But it's important that as we're debating things, that we're doing it with the goal in mind of answering questions and arriving at solutions and understanding one another. And the ultimate goal should be to provide the best possible education for every student. So any debate should be with that goal in mind. Simple. What is best for the education of all the students in the district? Okay. Sometimes the debate can get, as things get and as our world seems to get more contentious, those arguments can slip over into more like a trying to win the argument versus trying to arrive at a solution. Or the debate can become more emotional when people start saying, I'm offended by that, or you offended me, or things of that nature. There's really no room for that either. No one should be offending anyone, nor should anyone be offended. So that's irrelevant. We should honestly just be having healthy discussions with the point of trying to find solutions.
Right. How can the board be accessible to the community?
So they do this through the board meetings. These are open to the public, and even better, they're put on YouTube. You can find them through the Springfield Public Schools website. If you Google Springfield Public Schools, Missouri Board of Education, it'll take you to the Board of Education page, and you can click on any meeting that's existed for years and watch those meetings. If you want to go, it's open to the public. If you want to speak at these meetings, it's open to the public. However, in the last year, they have made it more difficult to speak at these meetings, which I'm not in agreement with. They used to be, you would have a 5-minute time limit and there was an unlimited amount of speakers. And I believe you could sign up, just show up and get on the list as long as you showed up before the meeting and got on the list before the meeting started. Now you have to sign up. I'm going to get the date, right? It's like the day before or a few days before. And they limited the amount of speakers to 10 in one given meeting, and they limited their time to 3 minutes. So I don't like this at all. I think we need more communication. I wish more people would get involved. It's not like every once in a while you have a meeting there's some issue that everyone's riled up about where it goes till 2 a.m. But if there's a meeting that people are that riled up about something, then it's important, or we got something wrong. And if they're going to be there, if the speaker's going to be there willing to show up and talk till 2 a.m., then I'll be there to hear them. Okay. I don't think it's our job to cut them off before that ever happens.
Right. You think that hashing it out, trying to take all the perspectives in before making the decision. Otherwise, you kind of have people's voice hanging out there that you didn't get to hear. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're public servants and we are elected into that position to be a voice for the people. So we should be able to hear them. Now, the policy of the board in those board meetings is they will not respond to the speakers. They say that before every public comment session, they read that same language. It says we will not respond. You can speak to us, but we will not respond. I don't think that that's very good either. We don't want a situation where the board is getting into arguments with the public. So I get the reason for that in that moment where people are a little bit heated to say, we will hear you. And maybe it's just best for us not to respond right now. But they probably should at least issue a response later, like through email, address these comments rather than just sit there with a blank look on their face, hear them, and then never respond.
Nothing. Yeah. It is kind of frustrating sometimes when you get into spaces like that, not just the school board, but in any, governmental space that, you kind of have a question and you can address it and be heard, but then you don't really know what the response would be. It could really make you feel kind of like, oh, well, what was the point of engaging, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
So, I mean, like, yeah, well, that's just how I feel. So, I've done that before, that's how I left. Like, what was the point of that? Because, I just kind of felt like you're not going to say anything to that, or, I want you want feedback and not to argue or anything, but you want to know, like, okay, this is where I'm at with that. Where are you, as a board? And so I think, that give it a couple of days and give a response is a good idea.
You say as the board, and that is part of the problem too. Sometimes if a board member responds to the public, it can be perceived as that person speaks for the board.
Yeah, okay.
The board gets really bogged down in process of like, well, before we make any comment to the public, we need to
come together
channels and make sure that we have a quorum and make sure that we have a majority vote before we decide what the board's opinion is on things. So that's part of the reason they get kind of weird about responding to the public. But as an individual, I'd be happy to speak with people, and I will do my best if anyone wants to reach me by email to get to them. And there's going to be times where I'll just get bombarded and I'll have to catch up. But I will make it a priority to eventually, even if it takes me a while, to get back to every single person. And I do that now through my campaign. I have an email address, kelly4sps@gmail.com, just the number 4. And I get emails, and I try, and it can take a lot of time to fully form a thought on a very nuanced issue. And I try to do my best to respond to those questions.
Great. And the other part of that question was to specific community groups, how can specific community groups, get in touch with the board? But the answer would probably be the same, avenue. But I want to ask you, because, we cater to the minority community groups, how are you reaching out to minority community groups, and are you connected, or do you see that there is a lack of opportunity to get connected to minority groups here in our area?
I'd have to think that through if there's a lack of opportunity to connect, because you're talking a lot of variables there. I'll tell you in general, it's really hard for me as a candidate to reach everyone that I want to reach, because the avenues just aren't as easy as you would think. Like, there's articles in the news leader. Not everyone has a subscription to the news leader, right?
Yeah.
There's, we've done so many of these forums. And interviews like this, there's hours and hours and hours of video and audio content of me talking about this sort of stuff. But how do you get that in people's hands? Well,
yeah, fortunately,
most people do have at least a phone, right? So I try to put as much content as I can on Facebook, or there's my website. So those are 2 ways that I believe everyone can reach, even if they don't have internet, maybe get to the library, right? But I don't know how to do better. I'm doing a lot of direct mail. We're sending a mailer out to every single person that voted in the school board election last year. So in terms of reaching the minority community specifically, I don't know how to do that, because I want to reach everyone.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm focused on, is how can I get my message out to everyone, because everyone in this community needs to be involved in these school board elections, not just the parents, not just the grandparents, because it does affect everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so let's go. Now we're getting warmed up. There's some conversations, that are out there in the community that we have to address. But let's start with this. What issues do you believe your district needs to address in its academic program and offerings? You kind of touched on this earlier. And what changes do you recommend?
So we've talked about this decline that's happened over years. Okay, I wish I could put that into a fancy little snippet or soundbite and say this is the easy fix, right? That's what politicians try to do. And I'm learning more and more through this process that that's just not the way the world works, right? There are a lot of variables that go into why we're declining. So I'll discuss some of what I think those are. And I think where it starts is with, so the board has a strategic plan, which is defined in a mission statement, okay? The point of this mission statement and strategic plan is to guide all decisions that the board makes. So the thought is we want to put our goals and strategies into one document so that it's clear and the community can see what our goals are. And then moving forward, every decision we make, we're going to consult that document and say, how can we run this decision through the filter of that document to make the best decision, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the mission statement used to be in like 8 years ago, it was Springfield Public Schools exists for the academic achievement of all students. And when I read that, I thought, wow, that is so perfect. Like, if you're going to sum up, what does the public school district need to accomplish? Well, it's academic, and because it's public school system, it's academic achievement for all students. And I love that they put in the all part even, right? Because something we're talking about now is diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
And that mission statement had existed for decades prior to when they eliminated it. And I thought it just so clearly had everything in it as what we're trying to do as a district. They changed it to, I'm going to get this a little bit wrong, but it's on their website. I'll get the point across. So it's Springfield Public Schools exists to be engaging, relevant, and personal. That's the 3 words. If you look on their website, it says underneath the logo, engaging, relevant, and personal. That's the mission statement of the district. And I think that, and the point of that is the central thesis of the strategic plan. And if you read through the strategic plan, there's no mention of academics or curriculum or achievement or things of that nature, okay? It starts with engaging, relevant, and personal, and then just goes from there and has a lot of flowery language, but none of it points to what the main goal should be, which is the best education we can give all of our students.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, that's the first thing that needs to happen is we need to change our strategic plan. It's outdated, and we need to change it with the central focus being academic excellence for all students. Okay. So
you think that might be a purpose for the decline because the strategy has changed. So you feel like if you pull it back, we can at least get back to where we came from.
And if you look at the timing of when we started to decline, it's right around the time that this mindset shifted from academic excellence for all students to being relevant, engaging, and personal. And you think about what that is. Someone told me this last night. I was talking about this in a meeting, and someone said, well, you can be engaging, relevant, and personal and still be doing all the wrong things. Like, how does that guide what you should be doing, right? It's not a guide. It's broad, flowery language, right? And I don't know how much being relevant, engaging, or personal helps the students get an education.
Yeah.
But I know if every decision we're making is focused on academic achievement, I know how that helps them, right? And that's the best thing we can do for all students.
Right.
So that would be the first thing. And I do believe that people say, well, what changed? I think that shows you in a very clear way that the mindset changed at the board level. And then all the decisions they make after that were run through that filter.
From the board.
And that's how we start seeing this decline over a few years. So then what do we have? We have a lot more things changed. So discipline policies changed. Okay. And we're in a situation now where we have record, 2 out of the last 3 years, we've had record teacher retirement rates. And in talking to the teachers, this isn't all about money. We do need to pay our teachers more. We've had 7.8% inflation in the last 12 months, and we only gave them a 3% cost of living increase this year.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a net pay decrease of a fairly significant amount there. And the year before that, there was no cost of living increase. So our teachers are losing pay as they're lagging behind inflation. Okay. We need to be competitive with the other schools in the area and also the other schools in the state to attract and retain good quality teachers, because the teachers are the most important asset of the district. Because if you're thinking about academic excellence for the students, well, the teachers are the most important thing to provide academic excellence. There's a lot of other things that the school district does, but the best way to provide academic excellence is with good teachers in person, one-on-one, with accountability with students. Okay.
Right.
So discipline issues have, some discipline policies had changed prior to COVID, and some behavioral issues were sort of on the rise, and then COVID happened, and then boom, it just took off. So we have kids that are just struggling more than ever right now. We have classroom environments that are more challenging than ever for teachers. And this is hurting the kids with the behavior issues, as well as the kids who are in the class with the kids with behavior issues. So I've heard a lot of examples where, so basically what it is the district, or really even the state, has put policies in place that have caused the discipline to be pushed more down into the classroom on the teachers. So I've heard a lot of examples where the teachers will send a child to the office and the office will say no and just send them right back. So one of the way, and every building's a little bit different, but one of the ways I've heard from some teachers explain it is one of the standard processes would be, if a kid is having an outburst, they'll take the other 24 kids out into the hall and let that kid have their 20-minute outburst and let them calm down, right? So the 24 kids out in the hall aren't learning. And then the kid in the room is also not getting the structure that they need to start correcting some of these issues that are going to hold them back, right? So everyone's losing in this scenario.
So it's so the discipline has become a distraction to the academics time for academics.
And it has become a very challenging work environment for teachers. I was just talking to a teacher last night
students
who was telling me these same things. She says, I work in the district, and most of my colleagues are all thinking about like getting out of the profession. There was a survey by the Missouri State Teachers Association in December, I think, that showed that 80% of the teachers across the state have either considered often or at least at some point considered leaving the profession. We are headed for a very scary time with our teachers. Now, it's always been the other way around. It's always been, there's more people, more qualified, everyone wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
More qualified positions, and the teachers were staying on late and not retiring till late. And it was hard to get a job in Springfield Public Schools. Now it's shifting, and they're having a hard time finding enough teachers to teach. And a real indicator is the substitute teacher shortages are huge in terms of an indicator, because it's common that a lot of substitute teachers are retired full-time teachers. Well, the retired full-time teachers are just, nope, I'm done. I'm not going back. So they're not filling the substitute teachers. So we're seeing the kind of the tip of the iceberg here of what might be coming is some real challenging staffing problems of attracting and retaining teachers, and pay is a part of it, but it's not all of it. If you ask teachers, it is tougher to teach than ever, and just paying them more won't fix that.
solve the problem. So what I'm hearing, and I'm just trying to clarify, for clarity of the audience, is what you're saying is that the teachers have a job to do and they're not able to do it. And the discipline and the teaching needs to be two separate entities, so that the teacher can teach and whoever is over disciplining can discipline, and so the school can function how it needs to function and everyone is happy.
So that's an area where the administration can really help the teachers stay in their role, right, and do what they love. The administration can help take some of these disciplinary policies and discipline issues off of the teacher's hand and remove some of those distractions from the classroom, and the teachers will have a better work environment, and they'll be able to get more done.
And the other students as well, because now they're not so distracted. So instead of dealing with one student, you're kind of dealing with the whole class if something happens.
Yeah. So, and then, okay, so we talked about strategic plan, and then below that, you've got how that's affected discipline policies. It's also affected, so we did a bond issue recently, $168 million we spent to build new buildings, right? And remodel old ones because we had kind of neglected some of our infrastructure. We basically like the 2008 market downturn. There was we just didn't have enough money and didn't put enough into our buildings, and we neglected them. So the taxpayers approved the $168 million bond to build new buildings. That's another thing that we need to have that mission statement, that strategic plan, that filter to look through. When we're spending $168 million, we need to make sure that every dollar that we're spending is through the filter providing the academic excellence for all students, right?
Yeah.
That way we're not wasting money on spending on some things maybe that don't go to that, right?
To that.
And then technology is a big one as well. So the last superintendent, his whole thing, like his whole goal, he was held accountable to this goal of his whole thing was putting more technology into the classrooms. And from my opinion, it was kind of done at a blind sort of
kind of staying up with the times,
right? It was just more technology, get it into every student's hand as much and often as possible. So again, this was 8 or so years ago. We're talking right before we started seeing this steady decline. They started doing the personal, like the assigned Chromebooks to each student, and they started pushing it lower and lower and lower into the younger and younger kids.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, last year, when my daughter was in 3rd grade, she got her first Chromebook. Okay, in 3rd grade, that was when she got it for the first time. Now it's in 1st grade.
It's in pre-K sometimes. Like my kids,
they get their own iPad.
The iPad, yeah.
Every kindergartner in SPS has their own iPad. Every 1st grader and up has their own Chromebook assigned to them. And I've got a lot of concerns with this. So it needs, just like anything, we need balance. Okay, technology is good; it's a tool, but we need to recognize the tool that it is. We need to graduate students that know how to use it. It needs to be available to students, particularly older students, so it can better their learning experience, but it cannot replace what only teachers can provide. Okay?
Yeah.
And I also believe that it's probably the case that there's some kids that are just too young to be spending so much time on these Chromebooks that they need one assigned to them. 1st grade is too young. I don't know where the line is, but when you have really developing kids socially and you have really developing kids physically, their eyes and everything, if they're spending several hours a day on these things and lacking the one-on-one engagement with the teachers, the amount of damage I think that we're causing those kids and how it's translating into their education. And I think this is another thing that translates into the behavior issues. So you see how it's all working together.
Well, yeah, because even I work from home, realtor, using the devices. By the end of the day, like you're wiped out, like you're staring at a screen all day, like you just want to distract yourself just to get yourself back to level 1. And I could see a kid, like, oh, I'm so bored of the screen, I'm just gonna do something else, or I need a break.
And let me give you one more layer to add to that could be contributing to some of the behavior issues also. So COVID provided federal funds for meals, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all the kids in the district right now are eligible for breakfast and lunch. And I believe during certain income standards can qualify you for free and reduced lunch, where you can get like grab and go stuff for evenings and weekends.
Yeah.
So like when I substitute at one of the schools this year, they come through and they offer breakfast to everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've seen these, but these breakfasts, so literally firsthand knowledge, I see this, Cocoa Puffs, a muffin, an apple juice, and a milk, right? 4 for $4, sugar, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, we have an opportunity to, we talk about, I'm going to mess up the term, the common term of, the kids that are hungry, they might not have food insecurity, right? They might not be able
Yeah.
their parents might not be able to quite provide them what they need. And we need to take care of those kids. And if they're hungry, they're not focusing as well as school. But what about if they're loaded up with sugar? You think they're going to focus as well?
Yeah.
This
is true. I never thought about that. Yeah.
If we have an opportunity to help the kids that need food,
yeah,
why are we giving them junk? I mean, it doesn't have to be anything special, but the worst thing it can be is sugar
on top of sugar.
And
yeah.
put it in front of a screen all day, right? What kind of mental issues do you think we're going to get?
Develop
the formula, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just see, that's a whole other side thing. I don't think I talked about that on my campaign. That's just something I saw soon. And
I'm glad that you went through those steps and those layers of your thought process so that people can get or understand the full spectrum of, how you think this should be took on. Those are some very important parts, but let's get to because we're getting to the end.
Let me finish this thought real quick. And
okay.
We need to take care of those kids that are struggling to get what they need at home. Okay. That is Absolutely. An opportunity, but let's not squander that opportunity to give them something wholesome and replace it with something that's damaging to them. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Okay. Now this is we're getting to the hot topics and we have to wrap up. So, I enjoy this conversation. We gotta kind of speed it up a little bit. So I'm just gonna go through these questions, okay? What is the role of school in teaching children about topics such as sex education, cyber safety, AIDS, wellness, and bullying? That's basically all of the controversial topics that, that might come up. Parents may or may not want their children to learn, but it's, what is the role of schools in teaching children about these topics?
So in talking about the role of a school board member, it's not the school board's member's job. And like what I was saying before, it's not necessarily a school board member's job to go into the cafeterias and fix what they're eating either. But it's the administrator's job to institute sort of policy on that sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So this isn't the type of thing that we would be really getting into the weeds on. However, I'm happy to provide kind of my outlook on some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Sex ed is important, right? Personally, as a father, I hope to be able to handle those issues with my kids. And I want to be very aware of what it is that the district is going to be teaching my kids regarding those topics and when. And our school's done a very good job of communicating that with us. And they opened up they said, if you wanted to view this content, you can come in, schedule time and come in and view it on your own before your child will see it. Or they'll give you a script, right? So they sent me a script, so I was able to review. I like that they gave me that opportunity to do that, but I also realized that there's a lot of parents or guardians or different sort of household situations where they're not going to take that opportunity. So for me and the parents like me, I think it's who want to make sure that they're having those talks with their kids. It's important that the communication is there, so that those parents can talk about those issues with their kids before they're presented to the class if they choose to. But it's still important as a community for the public school district to have those conversations with the kids whose parents aren't engaged or whose parents would prefer the district to just handle it. Okay.
Right.
So, and that sums up most of those topics that you just answered is
Right.
provide completely open and transparent communication before you're going to discuss those issues. Provide opportunities for the parent to understand exactly what's going to be in that curriculum.
Right.
But then make sure that we're still providing it for those parents who choose to be less engaged in
Yeah. So then that way that the student has the opportunity to have the tools that they need to address those topics if their parent is not so engaged. And the parent has the opportunity ahead of time to discuss, hey, this conversation has come up, let me be the first to influence my child before the conversation is not what I expected to be with my child.
Yeah, and to know that it's coming so that the parent can engage in those conversations. As a parent, my kid, I have a hard time getting them to tell me anything about the school day. So if I know that it's going on, then I can also engage with them after it to make sure that I can handle any questions of something they may be confused on, or something that maybe they were taught something as a parent that I don't think is accurate, and I want to address and give them a different opinion.
Great, thank you. All right, and then what do you think? What are your, and I'm gonna touch a small bit on this because I gotta get to the next question. What are your thoughts on school district programs for special education students and the gifted students?
Well, so this is where Springfield Public Schools has a huge opportunity because it's the largest district in the state and has so much resources. So for the kids who have special needs, whether that's gifted programs or other sorts of special needs, the Springfield Public School District just has access to resources that maybe some of the smaller funded sort of private schools or smaller schools wouldn't have access to. And of course, it's important that we make sure that we are getting academic excellence for all students, and that can look different for different students. We have gifted programs at Central and Pitkin, and then Reed has an advanced program. There's a lot of different schools that have these advanced programs, and it's important that we're providing the best possible education for every student, but also for some of the special needs kids who aren't in the gifted programs by any means. It's important that we're providing them the best possible education for them, right? I think in general, in terms of the gifted programs and the special needs programs, Springfield Public Schools is doing okay. I mean, they're certainly aware of it, and I'm sure there's problems that need to be fixed, but they're very much on top of these things. A lot of the issues that I explain are more for everyone in between. Where we're not providing the best education for everyone in between. Right.
Okay. Now this is one of the hot topics, okay? But I know you can handle it. What is CRT and how do we approach it?
I'm glad you're asking this because there's a lot of confusion on what it is. And a lot of times I feel like we're talking about two different things, because when you just say a term and then that term gets bounced around social media and news outlets and everything, it becomes this whole other thing. And you've got people over here thinking it's this and people over here thinking it's something different. And then when you just talk about I'm for or against CRT, then you might have a lot more common ground than you realize. You might be talking about different things, right? So in the board meeting in this all came up in the fall of 2020, I think, when there was a diversity and equity training at Cherokee Middle School for the teachers. And there was some materials in that training that was of the critical race theory curriculum, I guess. And in the December of 2020 board meeting, there was the DEI department presented to the board, and they said, and you can go back and look at this meeting, it's on the website, it's on YouTube. They said we're using components of critical race theory in our diversity and equity trainings to teachers. They said it, okay? This was before news outlets started talking about it. This is before 95% of people even knew what that term meant. Then a few months go by, it kind of becomes a hot topic, and then suddenly the district says, no, we never were teaching it, it wasn't part of it. But that was kind of word games, right? It was in, I mean, you can go back and look at their slides. They said it was there, right? So
just to be clear, you said to train the teachers or to train the students?
Fair question. It was absolutely from the district's mouth in the diversity and equity trainings for the teachers.
For the teachers, okay.
For the teachers. I don't even want to talk about if it's in the curriculum or not yet. We'll get there, okay? But because there might be some debate there, but there's no debate as if it was in the DEI trainings to the teachers, because the district said so themselves, okay? So when I saw that, I had heard this term before, but I had heard it from, you know, on the news or what, and I didn't want to take anyone else's word for it. I wanted to figure out what this was. So I went and bought the textbook on critical race theory, the original textbook. This is the college curriculum, which is what it is. It was designed for a study, like a college level law study of race and equity in the United States, right? It was originally published in 2003. The critical race theory had been around quite a bit longer and kind of formulated, and these two professors at Harvard, Delgado and Stefanchik, had put together that thought into the original textbook called Critical Race Theory from 2003. So I read the books. I wanted to make sure I understood what it was from the people who coined the term or invented it, okay? So this is where I want to be clear that we're talking about the same thing. So some people have come under the impression recently that critical race theory is all about teaching proper history. And those who oppose critical race theory are opposing teaching proper history the way it really happened. That's not what critical race theory is. Critical race theory is, it's a study that proposes, the sort of central thesis of it is this whole idea of intersectionality, which is, where are you on this chart of intersectionality? So all these sort of physical traits or inherent traits about you, line them up, and then that'll put you on sort of this matrix of where you are, right? So I may be a white male Protestant, whatever, you can list like several more things, right? Heterosexual, there's several other things, okay? And then someone else might be a Asian, gay, male, you know, Buddhist or whatever, right? And you can find yourself according to these things, and that's your intersectionality. And these different groups of different intersectionalities can be divided into the oppressors and the oppressed, because critical race theory proposes that there's this sort of systematic racist nature in society that these groups of people have, and they can't, even if they're not trying to, they're the oppressors. And these people over here, even if they're not trying to, are the oppressed. So it starts dividing everyone into these little classes. And these classes are based on a lot of things that we can't control, that really don't define us, right? It's telling me that I should look at you and you appear to be, maybe you're a Black female, whatever, right? And I'm supposed to know something about you because of that. In reality, that tells me nothing. I don't know anything about you. We all come from different backgrounds, right? We are all unique individuals. And I don't like the idea of dividing us into these groups and saying, these are these oppressors and these are the oppressed, because that's divisive. That's why I say using critical race theory, if you're teaching it as this is the way we should view race to children, is a divisive practice, dividing us up into these groups, which is kind of ironic, because I think the people that think they're for critical race theory think that I'm being divisive for saying that I'm against critical race theory, right? So I think what we can agree on is that a lot of us can agree on, whether we oppose or think that critical race theory is a good thing, is that everybody is unique and everyone deserves love and respect, and everyone deserves equal opportunity to the best extent that we can give them, right? And that's the way that we should be viewing people. And I think it's dangerous to start dividing us up into groups and saying oppressors oppressed. And I think it's really dangerous if you're talking about being curriculum to young people to teach kids, particularly the kids that might be in the quote unquote oppressed class, that, hey, you are part of this oppressed class and there's these oppressors over here, even if they don't mean to, they're holding you down and you don't have any hope. You won't be able to achieve in life because you don't have the same things that they do and they are oppressing you even if they don't want to. I don't think, even if you thought that was true, I don't think that that is something that we should be teaching kids, because I think it's really dangerous because it eliminates their hope. And kids need hope to be able to succeed in their education and achieve in life.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that your view of critical race theory is that it's putting labels on people that they can't or are not expected to be able to not identify with. So like what you're saying is that, like, okay, well, you're this and that you can only be that, and that's your identity going forward. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if that's the best summary of it. I'm saying it's teaching the opposite of what like Martin Luther King taught, which is more the idea of colorblindness, which is we're all humans in God, right? And we're all equal under God, and we should all have open minds, and we should all give people the benefit of the doubt, and we should not stereotype, and we should not assume we know things about people just because of the way they look or the way they act. We should be open and caring and understanding and treat everyone with love. And that's the model that I feel like we should be approaching things. But that is not what critical race theory is. It drives a wedge in and says, no. This group of people can be defined by this and this and these characteristics and all of that. And it starts creating these groups of people, which is more akin to communism than it is to capitalism, which is more about looking at humans as individuals and trying to create equal opportunity. And where there is lesser opportunity as it relates to school board, I can't affect the home lives of kids, right? And there are a lot of kids that are struggling with some tough home lives in our district. And it's certainly not just kids of color either. There are kids of all kinds of different makeups, different races, different sexual orientation or whatever, that are struggling from poverty or broken households or abuse, all different kinds of things. I don't think it does us any good to say, well, let's put them into this group and now we know more about them. I think it's a better approach to say, let's
clarify though, is critical race theory being taught? So if the teachers were being taught critical race theory, how does that affect the students? And are the students being taught this though?
I hope
like,
not.
Is there a class?
No.
Is there a class?
No, I hope not, that it's not in the curriculum for the students. However, I do know that we do know it was in the teacher trainings, right? And in those teacher trainings, there were teachers that said this, they were asked if basically, how would you rate this program and would you be willing to use it in your classrooms? So it was impressed on them to try and use it in the classrooms. And there are, it's not like there's nothing entitled critical race theory in our curriculum, okay? But there are components from that same line of thought that are in our bits of our English curriculum, bits of our math curriculum.
So one question, and I know, within critical race, because, I've read it,
Read that book?
It talks about, some activities that have happened to minorities and marginalized people. Sure. And it goes into that. My question to you is that, when it comes to, when it says, like, these people are the oppressors, do you believe that some of the critical race theory is actually true? Like, that some white people have been oppressive to minority Blacks or other groups, or is it that white people have never been oppressive?
Oh no, of course. So that's again why I go back to, of course, like this is about individuals, and there are instances of racism that happen every day. And people, you're going to have different experiences in your life than I'm going to have. I'm also having different experiences than you're going to have, right? And I don't think but to put us into those groups, it causes us to make a lot of assumptions that may not be true. And it also causes that sort of division between us. So yeah, absolutely, there is racism that goes on every day in this world. Is there systematic racism in Springfield Public Schools? I don't believe so. I'm not aware of it. If there are instances of racism that go on, I would certainly want to know, and I would certainly want to address it. So no, this is not a denial that racism exists. And it's not a denial that because I'm white, I might have had in my life a few more advantages than someone who's Black, but there's also Black people who may have had more advantages in life than me. So I don't think it's fair to just take this blanket approach and say, just because you look like this or your sexual orientation is this, that we now blanket know everything about you.
Yeah.
I think it really takes, I think it's a dangerous approach. I really do. I think it doesn't help us as a society, and it certainly doesn't help kids have a more open mind about each other. What we should be teaching is that we should have open minds about everyone, not just I need to learn more.
And let's talk about that, because with that, with the CRT, and it's a national topic basically, and that has impact on different localities and what they do, in their government. A lot of with the CRT topic, they have said, oh, they're teaching our white kids to be guilty. How did we get to that point, that people feel like white students are being targeted with CRT and that they're being made to feel guilty or shamed?
Well, I can't speak to that for Springfield Public Schools because, like we said, there's not like there's a CRT class being taught in Springfield Public Schools. So, and I don't want to theorize about what may be there, but we do know it was a teacher training, right? And we do know that in those teacher trainings they did, and there's a lawsuit about this right now, where they did have the teachers identify themselves on the oppression matrix and say, you must, you're here and you're here, so you're the oppressors and you're the oppressed, as some sort of experiment. So that did, at the teachers level, probably did make some teachers feel bad about themselves. They're adults, whatever, it's not the worst thing in the world, but they shouldn't have also had to go through that too. And I don't think it's helpful, because I think what came out from that is there was one teacher, I'm going to get this wrong, but said something like, well, I'm white, but I was raised by two Black parents or two Native American parents or something like that. And I don't know where to find myself on here.
Yeah.
Right. So I just don't think, it's the best way that we could be interacting with humans. I just am more a proponent of the love and respect for everyone, and the more colorblind approach of we're all humans and we all have different backgrounds. And in Springfield in particular, I mean, we're not the most diverse community.
Yeah, no, we only have like between 10 and 15% minority community.
But our poverty levels are super high.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of white kids that you could look at in the district and say, where's their white privilege? I mean, so I just don't think it does us any good. I don't think we're really looking at the issue. I don't think we're solving anything by trying to run it through the filters of if people are, Black or white or gay or straight. Do you feel
like students at all, outside of academics, especially Springfield students, being that we don't have a huge minority population here, need to be educated on minority experiences, which is what CRT is trying to touch on, but maybe not in the way that they're doing it?
I think there's value in learning from everyone's experience. This is why I read the book Critical Race Theory, right? I wanted to learn about it. This is why I read about 1930s Germany, right? Because I want to learn like what was going on in that society that they let all that evil happen, right? And I wanted to learn about that. Well, it's important that we learn accurate history and that we don't have an agenda with it. It's important that we learn other people's experiences and how they could differ from our own. And that's one of the good things about Springfield public school system is interacting with people who don't look like you or come from a different background. And the kids kind of get that on their own. One of the crazy things about that is if you see like kindergartners interacting together that are of different backgrounds or different races, they don't even notice. They don't even
No.
It comes years later, they start asking questions like like my son, just purely anecdotal, my son is watching football with me and he's like, why are they all black? Where's the white players? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. The best players are there. The best players are on the field. That's what matters. Watch them play football, you know? And he's like, well, there's a white guy, you know, points at a kicker or something, right? And I'm like, yeah, stop worrying about it. It doesn't matter. Like, just watch the game, right? But
that would also emphasize on the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, because I think what your son is saying is that I want to identify with the player, you know, like when a black student which is usually always the minority issue is that, you know, minority students aren't seeing or reflecting themselves with their environments. But in that situation, like your white son, you know, was like, hey, where am I? And then, you know, where am I in that?
On to something there. The end of that story, which I thought was hilarious, just the weirdest thing, just seeing it through a kid's mind, right? Is, well, he points at Patrick Mahomes and he goes, well, he's gray. And I thought, what? Where did that come from? Like, and just to see a young kid's mind put it together, I was like, at some point, I guess they don't realize it. And at some point it becomes like they start looking around and trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, that's just how, you know, and I was having this conversation with another, you know, as kids, you know, we grew up together you know, and everything's equal, but then as you grow, you start to see the differences, you know, you start to see the different impacts on each other, or, you know, between, you know, or, you know, versus or amongst one another. And that's why it's so important to learn and communicate and be a part of each other's lives and be connected.
Open mind, try to understand people's different backgrounds, but understand that we're all individuals. And just because we understand something about a particular culture or a particular group of people doesn't mean that that's translatable to every individual. You know, and that goes both ways. I mean, it can be dangerous also for, you know, the white kid who doesn't have any privilege, right? If other kids assume that he does just because he looks the way he does, right? Like, so all of this goes to say we're all unique and unique backgrounds. We all have unique challenges, and unfortunately, some have more challenges than others. And we should do our best to learn about other people's cultures and other people's backgrounds, and continue to have open minds about individuals as individuals.
And on the other side, because I mentioned the white child guilt part, and I've asked everyone else this question. On the other end, a lot of people don't zoom in as far as it goes with CRT conversation, you know, how the Black student feels on the other end, being called contradictory, or, you know, there's tension to talk about your history. You know, what do we say to the minority students who are affected by the debate of CRT, and that, hey, you know, we don't want to make those white children feel guilty, so we can't talk about your history, or, you know, they kind of go to the extremes like that. Like, what would you say to those students who are listening to that, or how do we handle their end of that stick?
I don't know that I completely follow the question. What can you
Yeah, I
summarize
can
what
say
you
it again. So yeah, let me summarize it. So on the opposite end, a lot of the conversation is always focused on white guilt, or, you know, you're making a white children feel guilty as far as the argument goes. So, but not a lot is focused in on how the minority student is feeling about individuals saying, oh, okay, well, if white students are feeling guilty, we shouldn't talk about, you know, Black history. We don't need to talk about the bad things that have happened to minorities, and we shouldn't. Those are history points that just don't matter because we're trying to, you know, be unified.
Well, if there's people that feel that way, it's certainly not me. I, I I can't speak for people that feel that way. There might be a perception that there's more people that feel that way than there really are,
Yeah.
or certainly not me. So I can't say that. I think it's important that we teach history, and I think it's important. Honestly, I think everyone needs to be a little bit less offended, whether across the board. Again, so I'm saying we're all individuals. I am completely equal in my thought that we should all try to be less offended. If you allow yourself to be offended, you will be offended, and that's only going to affect you. It's only going to make things harder on you, right?
Right.
But on the other end of that, people should do their best to respect other people's feelings and try not to offend, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone, if you're teaching about Black history or you're just any kind of history, history is history. Like what happened, right? And there's a lot that we can learn from it. And I don't know why anyone would be offended from that. And I'm not worried about someone's taking offense to that. But when you're talking about social matter, like there is a video that I saw that was in Springfield Public Schools. It was about microaggressions, which, yeah, a white kid could take some offense to that. But should they? No. But also, should it be the best? Is that the best way to go about a topic like that? No. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, microaggressions.
Yeah, this video, it was basically it related microaggressions in the form of white people were like mosquitoes buzzing around someone, asking questions that they thought were benign, but were offensive to the person, right? And by the end of them, that person, the person being asked the questions, the minority person started swatting them all with a fly swatter and killing all which were the white people. And I thought, well, that's a weird thing to teach kids, right? Like, is that the best way to go about that? Where we could just say, like, can we have other ways to teach people to be respectful of other people's culture? But then also, if someone doesn't mean harm by a question, we also should try not to be offended. And if you are, say I'm offended, okay? And then we'll say why, and then we'll learn from the situation, right?
Yeah.
So try to give people the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
Yeah.
That's where I think you get into situations. It's not teaching history so much as it's teaching current social issues. When you start painting a picture, some components of critical race theory can start painting a picture like, well, just because this is the majority class, they're the oppressors. And that's, we've heard about it, okay, but maybe it's not the best way to approach the topic.
I get it. Okay. Now, what are your thoughts on the current proposed budget for your district? And as a member, would you make any budget cuts? And what are your priorities, all wrapped into one? So
yeah, so your priorities become important when you're talking about the budget. That's where, when you're talking about priorities, it becomes very real, because you will at some point as a board member have to talk about cuts, and that's when your priorities come into play. I'm not going into this position thinking we need to make any cuts. However, there's a very real possibility that we have budget reduction coming as soon as next year because we've had an enrollment decrease, and that's how they do the state funding. It's possible that we will be looking at budget cuts. And when I look at that, the way I treat that is I want to look at it through the funnel of what's most important for academic excellence for all students, right? Period. That's the thing. And what's most important for academic excellence for all students? Well, teachers are first, and buildings and technology come behind that. So our money needs to be going into good quality teachers. It needs to be going into good quality curriculum. And to me, buildings and technology will lag behind that if we do have to make a cut. Not that I'm saying I want to cut those things. I'm just giving what my priorities are if a cut needs to be made.
Absolutely. Well, those are my questions. This has been a great conversation. I'd love to meet with you personally, have a cup of coffee, talk about either if it's after the vote, talk about, what your experience was and, what you're going to do going forward. And your job, your work, what you do in real estate. Obviously, I love real estate. So if you have any questions to me, the last question or last thing I would like for you to do is address the minority population, because that is, those are the people I serve, with my nonprofit. So, why should we vote for you, and anything else that you would like to say?
So in terms of addressing the minority population, I think, again, it comes back to what is most important, and that is the academic excellence for the kids, for all students. And we're not doing a good job of that right now. If particularly in populations that may be underserved, the best thing we can do is to provide the best possible education so that we give them the most opportunity to go on and better their lives or improve from wherever it is that they come from. It's the best thing that we can do. And we've talked a lot about some of these sort of distractions. And, we spent a lot of time talking about critical race theory here. And like you said, it's not even really that it's in our curriculum yet, right? The fear is not the fear, the concern is that it's maybe creeping in and there's some components, but it's not like there's a critical race theory class, but it has been our diversity and equity trainings to the teachers. Yet we spent so much time talking about this. And there's candidates that just don't talk enough about how we're failing our kids, all of our kids. And this disproportionately affects the people in the community with the least amount of means, because the people, it's not going to affect the brightest kids. We've got some great programs for them. Okay. And they can find ways to get into other more gifted programs, right? It's going to affect the people with the least amount of means, because the other students, the other parents who can, they'll move to Nixa, Ozark, Republic. They'll put their kids in Catholic and Covenant. They can do that and they can get away from it. So this decline in academic performance is disproportionately affecting the ones left behind, the ones with the least amount of means. And ironically, it's often the people who claim to be the biggest proponents of the kids that are struggling the most, of the kids that have the least equitable situations, that have been in control of the board and have led to this situation where our academics are declining. So that's my plea, is we need a stronger public school system, and it's failing our kids. And the best thing to do for all of our students is to improve that. And if we continue this decline, it's going to disproportionately affect the kids in the least equitable situations.
Thank you for that. Well, I just want to invite you to, we're having Juneteenth 2022, our third annual Juneteenth event. It's going to be at Jordan Valley Ice Park. anyone who's watching this, you guys come, and I just want to give you that opportunity to come and mingle with the minority population here in Springfield. I know for a fact, as a minority, there is not a lot of minority opportunities, for people to engage. And so I just wanted to create those spaces where that can happen. And so I would love to see you out there and let people know who you are and what you represent. But thank you for allowing me to have this time with you. I know it was a long time, but the conversation was engaging, and I hope the community can get a lot out of what you are trying to convey to them. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure talking to you.